let me explain the bare minimum just to move forward. In the original Don't Breathe, essentially, we had some robbers invade a house, an old man retaliates, and things just spiral out of control. Now, I rate Don't Breathe very, very highly. I don't know if I could give it a precise grade because it's really that great. I'd say it's at least an 8.25, but I'd be willing to even go as far as an 8.75. It's that good. It's not flawless or nearly perfect, but it's an incredibly well done film. And like many people, when I heard they were doing a sequel, yes, it's inevitable. It made a lot of money, but I'm thinking to myself, how are they going to do this? And as we're going to see with Perry Nemiroff, well, they kind of don't. So the sequel is out. It's already getting very mixed reviews, I think, with good reason, because it's not what you would think with the title Don't Breathe 2. So let's hear her speak and we'll respond.
That you're meant to root for. However, though, Don't Breathe 2 doesn't really position Norman as the traditional hero character. Instead, the movie is designed to encourage you to root for Phoenix, and Norman is just used as a character in order to support her well-being. Does that approach work? Not entirely, but as someone who was extremely doubtful about the potential of a Don't Breathe sequel that continues Norman's story without Rocky, I would say I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that they made this concept work at all. The trouble is, though, that success here is limited because, again, the blind man is just hands down one of the most vile horror villains we've seen in recent years. Even though Grace does really shine as Phoenix, she's super captivating in the role and most certainly sparks a connection with the viewer. Still, there is no forgetting the fact that her guardian here is a terrible person. Even though she may need him to survive the situation, I still found myself actively despising him, and that...
So yeah, apparently that's the story, is the old man and his character. We're going to see much more of him, but they're really not carrying the story of Don't Breathe forward. If you know, Don't Breathe is about a specific invasion to the old man's house and how he retaliates and defends himself. And I don't agree with her that the old man is a villain. I think the way it was laid out in the first film, they're all very, very suspicious, unlikable people. We're not really supposed to side with anyone, so I disagree with her orientation that the old man is a villain. Nevertheless, I don't think he's, yes, a protagonist or hero either. So this is very tricky, just taking the character from the first story and moving him to this second story. So I think they're basically pulling a Black Widow, where it's like, do you like Black Widow? Yes. Do you like ScarJo? Yes. Well, let's see her in a film where, hey, suddenly she has a sister. And I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense at all. But I don't think this is as bad as Black Widow, but basically they're just creating a new retcon version of the character just to move the franchise forward. But really, this is not Don't Breathe 2. This is really Old Man Part 2. And yes, the old man was central in Part 1, but it wasn't just his story. It was how he interacted with the other characters. That's what made that story really great. So apparently they just want to pull a bit of a bait and switch, and they want to continue the franchise. So it's like, whoa, you like the old man? You're going to see him again. And it's like, I don't mind the old man. I don't even mind an old man story. You don't want to call it Don't Breathe 2. That's kind of distortive. So the fears I had, and many people had, well, how are they going to really do a sequel to that story, have been realized, disappointingly, unfortunately, is that, well, they're not really doing a sequel to the story, because the way the story was laid out, it pretty much was entirely told. They did a really good job of it, and you're like, well, how are they going to improve or expand the story? And the answer is, really, they're not. They're just telling a whole new story, but they're just using the character from the first one, and you're like, okay, but then that's technically not Don't Breathe 2. It's sort of like when you see Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th. Yes, Freddy and Jason are central. They're big. You can't do the story without them, but they're not the whole story. We have Amanda, we have Jason's mother, we have other people. They even continue in the series for a little bit, not very long, but we do have a larger context with a Crystal Lake or the other characters, right? Nancy and others, Freddy's daughter, and so on and so forth. You can't just do it on this person or even this central character and say, well, it's the same movie. No, it's like the Jason X thing. Yes, that's a Jason movie, but it's not a Friday the 13th movie. There is a distinction. So I really wish they should have just emphasized this is really the old man and give it a different title, because some people are going to come in and pay good money and they're going to be like, wait, I wanted Don't Breathe 2, but this isn't Don't Breathe 2. So I'll have to see the thing for myself to judge its quality. But I think in terms of marketing, this is kind of suspicious. But unfortunately, the fears I had were realized in that, yeah, they just didn't figure out a way, I think, to do the story properly and expand it. That said, I don't think they're cashing in. I don't think this is a cash grab. I think they have honorable intentions. It's still written by the original director, so that's good. And he is producing this, so I do think that it has some integrity. But I think, yeah, in terms of were they really going to be able to do a sequel? The answer is no. They're not really doing a sequel. They're just doing a continuation of the franchise and kind of splitting the story off into a new direction, which is interesting. I do find it interesting enough now, this old man and the young girl, but that's really not Don't Breathe 2. That's my only major complaint in terms of the marketing. This is a really sort of deceptive in terms of what does this really mean with Don't Breathe as a series. If it's going to be a franchise, we should get a much more precise meaning of, well, what do we mean by Don't Breathe? What do we mean by the mythology? Because that seemed very specifically following Wes Craven, People Under the Stairs, and other films. Whereas this thing seems to be going off in a whole other direction. So I don't know if it really should be called Don't Breathe